All right, hello again. So we're going back to some whiteboarding, and today I thought I would talk about something that comes up a lot, which is AI taking our jobs? Is AI going to replace, especially right now, we're seeing it really big in the tech industry. We're seeing it also in marketing, communications, um, office admin or office jobs and so forth. But I'm going to focus specifically on software because it's just a more specific domain within it, but really this topic applies to everything. So kind of connected to this is like the future of work. Like, is there going to be work in software development? Let's say if AI just keeps writing, if AI can just write software itself, and also what's that going to mean for wages and employment levels and so forth. So I'm going to go talk a little bit first about some assumptions around this, and then I'm going to go a lot into systems theory. So this talk is really about applying systems theory to these questions and some different scientific principles and pattern matching, pattern prediction in order to create a possible future scope of what is the future of work going to look like in software development, right? We're looking at that. Okay, so in terms of assumptions, so right now the first assumption is that efficiency is increasing. So with that increase in efficiency, there is a, let's say, even if it's 30% more efficiency, but maybe it's 3 times more efficiency, right? How much code can be written per person? I'm going to talk of it in those terms because there still needs to be someone deciding what software is going to be written, right? I mean, we can have another conversation in the future about AI deciding what other AI should write software, but for that's a whole other conversation. Right now, we're focusing on what is really happening, which is people are still writing software. They're just getting more output per person. As a result, unemployment is going up, which is a lot. I think it's mainly, I have to look back at the statistics, but it's a lot of market entry problems is really the biggest area. And then the unemployment, it's lower, let's say more entry level positions or junior or mid-level programmer positions, and then the seniors are being kept. But in any case, it is an unemployment and it's a hard market to enter right now. Gone are the days where a computer science degree just meant a guarantee to a long, healthy career that is well paid, at least right now. Wages, as a result, are potentially going down. I know they're going up in highly specialized engineering jobs, which is this over here. So for example, Meta paying $250 million of annual salary for people who can help them build AI we're getting into sports team level of pay now for certain very specific jobs while other jobs are falling off. So there is definitely a pyramid or a concentration that's going on right now. Certain other kinds of jobs are decreasing, right? So things that used to be kind of repetitive jobs or data entry, those kind of things. And the other assumption we're going to make is that there is growth right now, but it's not infinite. What I mean by that is that there is still some stabilization that occurs. Like right now, we're in the kind of like the bubble pop of the hype cycle of AI. Even if these systems come in bursts of increased productivity, they do tend to come in steps. It's not just a infinite growth and next week computers are writing 2 times as much. I can write 2 times as much code, and then 2 weeks later they're writing 20 times more code, and 2 weeks later it's 200. Right? There is still some time to recoup. If you're a math kind of guy, what I'm talking about here is that we're not approaching the Euler constant of infinite growth. And if we were, there would be a phase shift, kind of like when water steams into gas, right? It's heating so fast that it just goes beyond its material state. Other things, so I'm going to talk about a bunch of stuff, but I'm not going to talk very much about the problem of entry. That's a whole other topic. And reskilling, right? I'm going to be talking just about unemployment levels and wages and so forth. Okay, let me move on. So in terms of systems thinking, there is this concept of homeostasis or dynamic equilibrium. So for example, I think it's the Malthusian, I don't know how to pronounce that, but Malthusian expansion, you correct me in the comments how to pronounce it. So if you have your food supply of a population, like in anthropology, if you're studying that, and all of a sudden the food supply jumps, maybe this could be a new land was discovered, or it could be a new technology was discovered, what it might be, whatever it might be, the population is not going to immediately, the population will be affected by the increased food supply, is what, studies show, but it will lag a little bit behind, and then it will overshoot the population, the food capacity, and then it will drop, and then it will normalize. So essentially, and then this is always true. So, right, so there's a lot of talk, for example, right now about like, why are world population numbers not growing anymore? One of the reasons could be food supply, right? If there's not enough food supply to support a larger population, populations will just naturally start slowing down. They'll start to decrease, either in a slow way that's not disruptive, or it could be famine, right? In the past, we used to have a lot of famines when populations would exceed their food supply. And then all of a sudden, they're like lower even than the food supply can carry, and then they find their equilibrium. So using this, I'm going to be doing a lot of parallel application, which is something I could say, so it's like looking at one pattern and applying it to something else. In systems theory, it's called analogical reasoning, or you can also call it cross-domain transfer. In general, it's called isomorphism, if you want to look up these terms. All right, so in thermodynamics, quick other example. So very different area, but now we're talking about water molecules, which have nothing to do with people and food. But if you apply heat to a system and you're heating it up, and then you remove the heat, the water is going to lag behind, and then it's going to go into some kind of equilibrium state here. And then if you reduce the temperature, there's going to be a lag behind it as well. The water can't help but follow whatever the temperature is. So the temperature you can also view as food supply, right? It's kind of the same. And if the temperature, if you didn't turn off the heat and you kept it right there, or actually the heat line would technically maybe even just like drop off, right? And then the temperature will hold at some level as it slowly goes back down to its original temperature. All right, so in terms of wages, so here's another example. I kind of just put some numbers around before I did the video. So wages, we think a lot of the times like we want higher wages, and I definitely want more wages. I think everybody wants to be earning more money, to have more purchasing power. But it's a little tricky in a market economy, in capitalism, or in a system where you have money, because essentially things still in this system also reach to a stabilization. They refine an equilibrium. So when women were entering the workforce from the 1960s on, more and more women have been working. We went from 20% to 60% by the end of in the 1990s. I don't know what the percentage is right now, but I'm sure it's that number or higher. But the cost of living in that same time period also went up 120%. And even though the average household income only went up about 30%. So what you can see there is, imagine you were back in the 1960s and your household, let's say only one person was working, another household, only one person is working, and all of a sudden your household decides, oh, we're going to both start working now, both sides. So you've just gotten to, maybe it's not double the income, insert, whole other discussions about equal pay. But in any case, you've got two people working and you've got more income coming in. Another household that didn't do that isn't going to be able to move into this, nicer, fancier house, right? Let's say these people here still have to live into a smaller house. So initially, you're going to be experiencing this as just an amazing thing, because now you're able to live a more luxurious life. But eventually, more and more people also join and double the workforce, until eventually everyone, or in this case 60%, or enough people are entering the workforce that it's no longer an advantage, it becomes the norm. And as it becomes the norm, the prices, people are able to charge more for their homes. And all of a sudden, everyone is, I don't know if we're all stuck in smaller homes or bigger homes, but in any case, we're all back in the same sized homes again. And if the cost of living is increasing to match the rate of the income level of wages increasing, you're not left any better off minus whatever progress is being done with technology and other innovation, right? So maybe your income to cost of living ratio stayed the same, but now you have access to dishwashers and televisions and nice soft couches and all these things that have gotten better since the 1960s, 1950s. If we were to graph that out, so as the income of people increased over time, let me actually curve that out a little bit more. And then the amount of women working in that workforce is kind of let's say it's the same line. Maybe it's slightly above it, but they're on different scales anyway, right? Because one is income and one is percentage of women working. But the rent costs, right, would start here, and then they might lag, just like the water does when you boil it. Oops, I hit the zoom in by mistake. Let's get that. Oh, I'm still in the zoom tool. So sorry. Pen tool. And move it around. I think I have to zoom in one more time. Dun, dun, dun. And we're back. Okay. So just like the water, right, there might be a lag here of some kind. And this is not to scale, obviously. I'm just trying to draw this out. And so these rental prices would also kind of go up and potentially overshoot, becoming too expensive. And then there's some kind of equilibrium as they stabilize. It should be more around the income level. So let me adjust this a little bit so that it kind of stabilizes around this income level. Of course, I'm abstracting here. The increases of costs of living and wages are not going to be proportionate across society, across different income groups. So this is a gross simplification, but in any case, what I'm showing here essentially is that, hopefully it makes sense from this, is that even though initially it was a great idea, it sounded like a great idea, or it is a great idea, that women are working and that women can do what they want and pursue their own career goals, the specific element within that of income increase to cost increase is only a short-lived gain, because eventually the system will just assume everyone is working. And if you're a couple where one of you isn't working, now suddenly you both have to work because the system, the cost of living, expects it, right? So it's something to be very aware of as people fight for higher wages and more rights. Okay, so AI revolution that we're seeing today, have we seen anything like it? Absolutely. I mean, the agricultural revolution was enormous, right? The output of food increase from the agricultural revolution was astronomical. We went from very small numbers of people, I think in the millions, planet-wise, if I remember correctly, to where we are now in the billions, right? And part of that increase, of course, is fossil fuels, but the agricultural revolution itself was massive. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong with those numbers. All right, so but the same thing happened when the technology came to the agricultural revolution. You went from whatever employment level we had, I don't know the exact number, but let's say it's somewhere around here. And as the revolution happened, just tons of people were fired because you just didn't need as many people. And then suddenly the output of food started dropping, right, because no one has work. And then the employment starts going back up to this. So let's say that this is 100%. This is different charts, right? One is food output, which is potentially going to go up forever. Because you can keep innovating more food production, but the employment for food did go back up. Now, did it go back to where it used to be? Probably not. And then as more of these peaks of new innovative growth was created from new technology, the system would collapse again, renormalize, and maybe normalize at a slightly lower position again over time, right? So there might be a net decrease in this employment level from each step up of output, but it's not going to zero. It's just renormalizing at that new equilibrium. So in terms of software efficiency, software output per person, if we're seeing the software output per person is going up to some higher number, let me draw that a little better. If it's like this right now, let's say, then we're going to see, or we are seeing the same thing where we see a drop in employment and then some kind of normalization, and then maybe it renormalizes at a slightly lower level than it used to be until the next peak of efficiency happens. And then again, we will have the same drop, right? Same drop and then renormalization. All right, so putting this all together, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the patterns. Sorry, I think with the zoom out and in, I can no longer get it exactly on the screen, so I'll just have to scroll. But the patterns I think we're going to see in the future. So some jobs are going to floor now. So because before I was talking about the general pattern of the whole system, but of course, as you look at specific types of jobs, people will need to retool and just approach work in a different way. So other types of jobs are going to be appearing. We're currently seeing that in some roles that are very high paid, right? If you have the skills to be hired by Meta right now and make that $250 million pay, that's crazy, but it will decrease because I can assure you there's people right now all scrambling to get exactly those skill sets with AI engineering, and the market's going to get flooded within that specific space. Maybe we'll continue to see such high paying amounts because of company to company wage wars, right? Where they're trying to take the top talent, kind of like football players. But so, that remains to be seen. But the market as a whole, the wages that can be expected to be earned for this role are not going to be, it's unlikely they'll stay at that crazy high amount because people right now still have to learn to fill in this new gap, right? It's like an empty spot. New people are going to tool up into that area and it's going to reach dynamic equilibrium in the wages right there. So employment will again increase in order to reach that equilibrium. So how are we going to be seeing that increase? So in terms of the results, I think we're going to be seeing from this system, if we're going back up to that higher amount, we're going to be seeing a lot more software, right? So a lot more software written. There's going to be a much lower barrier, there already is, to creating a software company or startup or a new idea. And because of that, we're going to be seeing also more demand for software because the price to produce software is lower. So a lot more ideas can be coming to fruition, both within companies as well as people who have their own ideas for software. We're also going to be seeing a trend of AI everywhere, or micro AIs. So think about they don't have to be very smart, just like little tiny agents operating within, they're embedded in some systems right now. Facebook for years, for example, has had an AI that tracks every individual person to learn their specific interests, ideas, needs, wants, desires. But that's a different kind of, that's like a more of a machine learning adapting to you. But there's little AI agents that can be making little tiny processes that make little micro decisions with tiny models for a very specific application that can be put all over the place to make decisions, right? Could be even on just like the gauges of a car, like each gauge could have its own little AI monitoring that gauge, and then all it has to do is make decisions around that particular job and then pass the information up to another agent that's running the entire car system and then can then make predictive recommendations to you and say, hey, you're scheduled for a tire rotation in 4,000 miles, but based on the data I'm seeing from your wheels, you should go 1,000 miles early, get them checked out because we're seeing a slight deviance in the performance of the car or something like that. I don't know. I'm just coming up with some random ideas, but there's just lots and lots of new software you're going to start seeing software places that you thought it never made sense to do software for it. Also, there's going to be, to that note, right, there's going to be a lot more specific domains, specific applications, like really niche software, as well as really customized software. Because essentially what we're seeing right now, these little bubbles on the right, these companies, let's say they're all downsizing, they're all looking at their bottom line right now, right? And I think that's some companies are thinking about AI and how to use it for their top of the line, which is awesome, because that's going to increase, that's more of like a growth mindset. But bottom line, emphasis on software development is kind of the largest right now. People, when I say that, I mean companies are pressurizing to kind of reduce costs. But all it's going to take is one big company that starts going the other way around and starts saying, no, we're not lowering our workforce now, or we're done lowering. We're now going to be we're going to be hiring all of these people with computer science degrees, or all these people who've been learning AI engineering and so forth. And we're going to be rehiring them on or expanding to be able to get to this, 3x output or whatever it is the new kind of standard that they're going to be doing. And as soon as they do that, it just puts a huge amount of pressure on all the other large, medium, large companies, enterprise companies to adapt and follow suit. Because if they don't, they're going to be completely left behind. So it's just another one of these equilibriums, right? The same thing that we were drawing before. This curve, right, of dynamic equilibrium, it happens everywhere in nature, and it happens in human societies and monetary systems and growth systems. It's just going to happen here in the AI thing too, right? So that's my answer. So will AI take software jobs? Yes, it's taking them. Will people adapt and find new roles to do within this new system? Yes. Will, if nothing else changes, will we reach the same levels of employment that we used to have in the software industry? I think so it's possible that it might not even be the end dynamic equilibrium state might not be lower. If we were here and we're dropping down, we might not normalize back up here. It's possible we could even normalize higher, right? This percent, because there's even more demand for software than where it used to be. It could normalize out lower, right? It really depends also on some things that we can't quite predict, which is how much additional innovation is happening, how quickly. Because this curve is, here it's happening, if we do this, it's on a flat curve, but it's probably happening on some kind of an upward trending wave, right? So if it's happening an upward trending wave, the market has to have time, just like the water needs time to reach that temperature. And if the temperature just keeps increasing, even if it's increasing at 4 or 5% per year, the people have to, what's happening in the day-to-day of people retooling and companies rehiring and new initiatives happening and new projects starting and new software ideas, these things have to also keep pace with this pace of innovation. So all this to say, I don't know if we're going to be below, equal, or above in, say, 3 to 5 years from now. But the one thing I'm pretty confident about saying, based on the systems theory, if the assumptions are true, is that we're not going to just drop and then just floor out with no software developers anymore, or just even tank to zero or something like that. Because once people really realize just how much more you can do with these systems, it's just like with the agriculture, right? Once you realize that you can feed twice as many people, there's no reason you wouldn't bring people back on to increase that food, right? Because as you increase the food supply, population size grows. Anyway, that's it for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you learned something. If you have any comments, feedback, things you think I could improve, of course, let me know. I'd love to hear it. All right, thank you very much.